I'm Keen947, aka Wolfkeen, and welcome to another edition of Wolfkeen Talks. Now today on Wolfkeen Talks, this is a topic I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and it's become more prevalent nowadays with them becoming more and more widespread and otherwise, and the topic is remasters and remakes. But the reason why I want to talk about this topic is because I've been seeing a lot of argument on what is considered a good remaster slash remake or what's considered a bad remaster or remake. And it really does come down to there being no one way to do it, if you ask my honest opinion. The reason why I say that is because we've seen remakes that try to be faithful to the original, and many people unfortunately don't like it because it doesn't add anything and it feels unnecessary. Whereas we've had remakes that try to change up the formula, creating almost a brand new game, but still with the same story that we all know and love, but also not being well liked because people wanted it to be more faithful to the original. And it's kind of strange to say this, but it really does come down to there really isn't one way to do a remaster or remake. And I'm going to bring up a few examples that fall into both camps. So that's pretty much what the topic is for today, and it's going to be an interesting one, I'm going to be honest. So let's talk about remasters that try to be a little more faithful to their original source material, which that's usually what a remaster is. A remaster is just upscaling the graphics and making the game look and play better while still retaining its original ideology and all that kind of stuff. Like if I were to give a good example of a good remaster series, like an HD remaster, I'd say the God of War collection and the Devil May Cry collection are good examples of that, where they've only just upscaled the graphics and stuff like that and didn't really touch much else when it comes to gameplay. I don't know where I fumbled there, but yeah, they pretty much left everything intact except for upscaling stuff, but to some people that can be seen as a detriment because there are some bugs and otherwise that were pretty much still there from the original incarnations to the HD remasters, but they're still seen as good releases. Now, if we were to bring in remasters that are really bad for it, obviously you have the obvious one with Silent Hill HD Collection back on the PS3 360, but if you want a more recent example, Dark Souls Remastered. Dark Souls Remastered basically was trying to be like an upscaled version of regular Dark Souls, but a lot of people called it from the jump. It was going to be Dark Souls with just the DS fix patch in there, and it was, unfortunately. Like, it added some quality of life stuff, which was nice, and even some gameplay improvements, which was also nice, which we usually only see that for remakes, not really remasters. But the problem is that while, yes, it was a faithful remaster, it was faithful to a fault. Literally having a lot of the same bugs that the original game had, creating new bugs that didn't exist in the original, and also keeping some of the worst parts about the game. If you actually want to see more about what I'm talking about and stuff like that, check out Infernal Plus's video on Dark Souls Remastered is garbage, because that video does a way better job of explaining its faults and problems than I ever could hope to do. But to give the Cliff Notes version, it was basically a remaster done to almost like cash in on the fact that they were trying to release like a trilogy pack and stuff like that, and didn't really do much to basically improve the formula of the original Dark Souls. Like, if it's the only version you can get, then you know what, it's fine, it works. But if you've played the PC version, or you have the PC version, or even the PS3 360 version, there's no reason to buy this one. And it's one of those examples of, why do you exist? And that sucks. I don't really know too many remasters that change up the game so dramatically or whatever have you, because again, remasters tend to not really do that. They tend to be more just upscaling things and stuff like that. Some people will say Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster is that, but that's a remake, not a remaster. Speaking of the topic of remakes, this is where we get into the biggest point of contention. Remakes have two different categories, where they change it up dramatically but still keep the main bones intact, or they try to be faithful, changing very little. And unfortunately, there's arguments to the negative on both sides of the equation, and we've seen as such. And I'm going to give a few examples. The biggest example of a remake that remained faithful while also not really changing all that much, Shadow of the Colossus remake. If you check out Shadow of the Colossus remake, it's pretty much one-to-one in almost everything. There's some new cutscenes and stuff of that nature, but there really isn't much added in terms of the original Shadow of the Colossus. And considering that this game was remastered on PS3 with a collection not that long ago, I say not that long ago, but you get the point, it really does come off as, why do you exist? yes, it's cool to have better graphics. Yes, it's cool to have the 60 FPS. But there's so many people who were hoping for more. Maybe the cut Colossuses that weren't in the original game will be brought into this version. Maybe they can add some new stuff into the overworld and stuff of that nature, and yada yada yada. People were hoping Shadow of the Colossus Remake would add more, being a remake, so they have the opportunity to do so. But it tried to be faithful, and by being faithful, it actually was seen as unnecessary. And you can make that same argument towards Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster too. Despite making a lot of changes to the Dead Rising 1 formula, including quality of life, like better survivor AI, because let's be honest, the survivor AI in Dead Rising 1 made you want to do unimaginable things, and as well as improving things like everybody has voice acting, better controls, and stuff of that nature. The problem is that it's too faithful. I know some people will say that's not true because they changed VA and stuff like that, but let me get into it. The story is practically the same. The gameplay is what we know. The difference is that it's easier. Way easier. Almost too easy for a lot of people's standards. The VAs don't really do very well in their roles. Like, most of the voice actors in this one are kind of weird. Some are good, others are not so much. And then, of course, the big one, despite this being a remake, they add nothing new. There's nothing new. And that is a big negative that people have with it, is that why do you exist when we have the PS4 re-release? And it's a good point to make, but I can't understand why they did what they did, because the first Dead Rising has a lot of mechanics and otherwise that are really hard to get a handle of. So the remake helps fix that. But again, it could have done more. And maybe it should have done more. But then you have those people who get mad at a game for not being faithful. Like, for example, Persona 3 Reload. I know Persona 3 Reload has gotten a lot of positive praise, but there are plenty of purists out there who feel Persona 3 Reload is basically a shell of its former self, saying that it changed too much, that it basically turned these characters into something unrecognizable and other stuff of that nature. And there's an example of that, where it's like they wanted to be a one-to-one remake, but would that have been a good thing? Would you want a one-to-one remake where you have AI-controlled teammates, where we had the really weird writing in certain parts and other stuff of that nature, being forced to be boyfriend to all the girl characters in the game? Like, there's a lot of stuff in Persona 3 Remake that, well, Reload, that fixes a lot of the problems, while also adding some really smart and good gameplay decisions, including in the answer, because the answer was a drag. But in Reload's version of the answer, it actually makes it faster, but that's the point that I'm getting at. There are a ton of other games that fall into the being too faithful to the point that it's unnecessary, or changing too much to the point that people really don't like it. I mean, Last of Us Remaster, Last of Us Part 2 Remaster, Last of Us Part 1 Remake, Horizon Zero Dawn Remake that's coming out pretty soon. Hell, we just had Until Dawn get a remake that's faithful, but it's worse. It's worse than the original, and that's crazy to think about. And then you have, again, remakes that change up so much stuff about the game that people are just like, there's no one way to make a remake or remaster. And I think people are kind of misunderstanding that, because you go one way or the other, you're not going to please someone. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't, if you ask me, because you're either pleasing the purist or you're pleasing the new crowd, and there really isn't any pleasing both in this situation, if you ask me. And that sucks. So with that said, what are your thoughts on this topic? Do you feel that there are remakes or remasters that were faithful to the point that it's unnecessary, or changed too much to the point that it just feels unrecognizable? Do you agree with a lot of what I'm saying? Do you have your own examples? Go ahead and leave a comment down below and we'll discuss it in the comment section. Now with that said, not much is going on the channel still. I'm still slowly trying to get the grips on things, and I'm also trying to get my Patreon reset up, rebranded, and everything. Links for all that will be down below, obviously, but I will be doing a proper video about the Patreon in the near future, because I need to do a new Patreon thing, and I also need to basically get everything else set up, so it's going to take me time. It's slow, but I'm doing the best that I can, obviously. So with that said, I'm Keener47. This is why you mute your phone when you're recording. Jesus Christ. So with that said, I'm Keener47, aka Wolfkeen. Hope you enjoyed, and until next time, guys, take care.